Arnold, hey buddy, this is Dispatch with Fazbear Entertainment. How are you feeling?
Well, since you asked, I just finished a 36-hour shift, and I'm struggling to stay awake. Frankly, I tried to tell my manager that I can't park like this anymore.
You know, when I took a long break from Five Nights at Freddy's, I expected to come back to something good. And with all the hype surrounding this game, which is honestly non-existent next to Security Breach, I thought I was going to enjoy Secrets of the Mimic. Instead, I came back to this.
Why is that? Why is this one so low res? Hey, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute.
I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I think this is a game so utterly confused about what it is, what it wants to be, and who it's even for, that I'm pretty sure it was designed by an AI trained exclusively on Reddit theories, Poppy Playtime chase scenes, and a vague memory of FNAF 3. Honestly, I feel like I'm the only one who sees this, because it's a mess, and it's not the fun kind of mess, not the security breach, oh my god, he clipped through the freaking floor again kind of mess. This one's different. This one hurts. And I think the reason people are so content with this game being how bad it is the same with Security Breach.
Two things still bother me about the bugs launched with this game. One is that this game got a slap on the wrist. Cyberpunk 2077 was lambasted at launch, and Security Breach was criticized, sure, but still had averaged positive reviews on Steam. As for point number two, as stated in my original Security Breach video, this game is still poorly designed at its core, even in a perfect scenario where there are no bugs.
So yeah, FNAF fans are usually easier to please, and even if you feed them glitchy and boring garbage, they will still enjoy it. So today, we're gonna do something I've been putting off for a while. We're gonna walk through this disaster, start to finish, story to gameplay. Because if nothing else, Secrets of the Mimic is proof that just because you slap some animatronics in a dark hallway and call it survival horror, it doesn't mean it's going to work. Before we even get here, here's how this is going to work. This video is going to be split into two parts. First, we're going to be walking step by step through the story, using the environments from the game as our guide. I'll be breaking down the plot, pointing out every single moment that makes zero sense, and trying to figure out how this fits into the FNAF timeline, if it even does. Then, in part 2, we're tackling gameplay. Glitches, repetition, broken AI, chase sequences that make Hello Neighbor look like Alien Isolation, and of course, the Mimic itself. You know, the one thing the game is named after. Somehow, this is also the most disappointing part of all, but we'll get to there later. Of course, there's going to be spoilers, and this is all going to be condensed into one video. Probably the longest I've ever made. And by the end of this, if I've done my job right, you will understand why this game fails. Not just as a FNAF title, not just as a horror game, but as a piece of interactive storytelling. Which I know sounds dramatic, but wait. Stay with me here. This is a game that wants you to feel tension, to feel trapped, to feel like something is hunting you in the dark. Instead, you most likely feel like you're watching a low-effort FNAF fan game in a dying YouTube Let's Play. You feel nothing, and that's the problem. Let's begin.
I just pulled up.
Good job.
Doesn't look like anyone's here.
I'm sure you're right. Those motion sensors never tell the truth.
So the game begins. You play as Arnold, a technician sent in to investigate a defunct Fazbear facility called Murray's Costume Manor. And I'll give the game this, for once we actually have context. Arnold's here on purpose. There's a mission, there's a voice in his ear, the dispatch. No cryptic retro newspaper clipping, even though that is a pretty good setup, but there's an actual introduction here, and there's no phone guy. There's just a clean setup, and you know what you're gonna do. Cool, we're off to a solid start. But can this game keep it up? It isn't until you take 2 steps into the place and you realize something's off. This doesn't look like FNAF. It doesn't feel like FNAF. And I know this is very subjective, but it feels more like a Unity asset flip with a circus theme. It's not looking like a horror franchise that used to build tension with nothing more than a flickering light and a pair of glowing eyes in the dark. Honestly, it all looks so sterile, like Poppy Playtime almost. Well, Poppy Playtime had its own theme going for it. It's overlit, there's open rooms, props scattered everywhere, like someone just rage quit building a Halloween maze. There's no oppressive shadows, there is a little claustrophobia, but it's not as claustrophobic as something like the original Five Nights at Freddy's was.
Wine.
There's very little atmosphere, except for a certain section I will talk about later, and I wish I could say this was a fluke, but it's not. Throughout this game, you get terminals, recordings, pieces of lore. Fiona's name get dropped, which is something I will cover later. I'll cover the whole timeline after I cover this story, or what you see initially. And animatronics were tested here and sold. Some kind of incident happened, blah blah blah, and then you're here. But to the game's credit, it tries. You can tell there's some backstory being pieced together here, but it's the kind of exposition that's kind of bland, and it's meant for a wiki page, not a game. The kind of story that's more fun to explain in a YouTube theory video than it is to experience for yourself. I know this firsthand because when I was experiencing this game for myself, I got so freaking bored that I just started dozing off, zoning out whenever a lore section gets dropped, one of those terminals, those recordings. And I had to watch a couple videos to get myself up to speed with this story because it was just that boring and that uninspired. It was kind of like Bendy and the Ink Machine, if you know what I mean. And then here's where we meet the Mimic, the supposed main threat of the game, the title character. And this is it. This is the first glimpse. There's no noise, there's no stinger, there's no suspense, there's no build up. It's just a shadow in the distance and then poof, gone. No escalation, no sense of dread. Just presence, like a background NPC in a game that forgot to load. It's honestly impressive how little this game seems to care about making you feel anything at all. And the Mimic is just one example of that. Like, you just saw how fast you could deal with the guy in this playthrough. I don't know what else to say. And this is where we come across a lot of design choices that just seem off. First of all, why is the Mimic attacking Arnold here? We know from one of the endings, the neutral ending, the Mimic wants the data driver, but why attack him here now when the Mimic can just wait until Arnold has all the security clearances and then attack Arnold and get the data driver then? And yes, I know, before you write in the comments, which I still encourage you to do, I'm going to tell you that I do know that the M2, the Mimic, or whatever it is, has been exposed to violence, so that's why it's enacting violence on us. But as we've seen from the neutral ending, one of the endings that you get, you see that the Mimic doesn't have to enact violence on us. It doesn't have to. It's not forced whenever it sees someone to kill them. It can have an ulterior motive, and it can act upon that, like it didn't kill Arnold in the neutral ending at the very end. The fire does. He just wants the data driver. So that isn't a very valid argument against why he shouldn't kill Arnold in the first place. Also, while being more of a problem for the future of this video, what does Arnold add to the story? With every good FNAF game and almost every good horror game with a story that's important to the game you're playing, there's always something that the main character adds. Whether it's the person you play as in FNAF 2 on the screen right now, where they are Michael Afton, who is the son of the main antagonist of the story, William Afton, or even Resident Evil, where in a game even as secluded like Resident Evil 7, you play as Ethan Winters, who is supposed to embody the everyday person. Arnold has almost no dialogue, has almost no reaction to anything surrounding him when it's important, unlike all the other characters mentioned, except, I don't know, the FNAF ones. And also, he doesn't really add anything lore-wise, he's just a random guy. At least Ethan's story from Resident Evil continues in the next game, and he also has connections to the main characters of other parts of the Resident Evil series. Arnold doesn't, for his franchise. Even with these problems, nevertheless, we must continue on with the story. Continuing on, when you wind this box, you encounter Jackie, that creepy Jack-in-the-Box animatronic in her confined quarters. Jackie segments were hyped. Gameplay-wise, Jackie has a chase scene, and her chase scene is over quickly and feels mechanical. Just another scripted chase with little variation. There's minimal atmosphere or urgency in her section because you know you're gonna get it through, and despite the visual reveal, it is honestly kind of boring. You sprint through the hallways, there's a brief flicker of tension, and then she disappears, never to be heard from again. Gone. Dead. There is a part where Jackie gets destroyed somehow, and when she's chasing you after she's been withered, she has the mimic's eyes poking through, hinting that instead of Jackie being her own thing, it's just the mimic chasing you. So it kind of boils down just to the same chase sequences that we've been going through the entire game, and will be going through the entire game, just in a different coat of paint. Then you plunge straight into the Big Top area, a circus-themed chamber supposedly meant to be surreal and horrifying. Kind of. Problem with Big Top section is that it feels more ornamental than anything, and although the gameplay section is somewhat creative compared to the rest of the game, it honestly gets pretty repetitive after a while, and ends in, you guessed it, a chase scene. Big Top seemingly dies, and then guess what? It's on to the next part. Oh, so fun. Here is the big issue. The Big Top section is set up as a crescendo, a surreal peak after Jackie's reveal and, eventual death. But the game design doesn't back it up. There's not enough time spent into the Big Top section developing and increasing tension in the player, just like Jackie's section. And honestly, this is probably the biggest issue with the game. It doesn't spend enough time with each of its individual characters, even if they may all be the mimic, so every section falls flat. Honestly, there's almost no thematic context. There's no connection back to the personal and main story. There's no linking thread to Maria Arnold. It's just another level with cool set pieces and not enough time is spent in it to actually truly enjoy it. At the end of the day, just like I said before, this is just a giant set piece with gameplay moments surrounding carnivals, and these gameplay sections aren't very good either. And this is all kind of the theme here. You're given moments that look meaningful, like Jackie's mask tearing off, the carnival setting, but the mechanics, the pacing, and the narrative glue required to make them land aren't there. And we're left with environments that could have been horror highlights, that could have been cool, but stand only as missed opportunities and just visual bookmarks of what the game could have been. What? No, we have to keep going forward. We have to keep seeing new animatronics. Oh, it's visual stimulation. Oh my god, we have to keep going. The story is still there. We have to look at more cool things. Can't spend time here. We can't have good character development. We can't have animatronics that actually do things. We can't have tension. We have to keep going. Move fast, 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 fast. Forward, 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 faster.
Oh, no. Poor Captain. Another Springlock failure?
No actually. After the Big Top section, you progress deeper into the facility and you reach the maintenance/recycling area with Nurse Dolly, which you're seeing in front of you on the screen right now. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this section because it is very similar thematically to the previous two, and all my complaints will be nearly the same, except for the springlock suit. I feel like with the springlock suits being so critical and vital and honestly iconic to the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, it should have been handled way better here. As you're seeing on screen right now, we see that the Mimic is actually fooled by the springlock suit, which is very inconsistent with the Mimic's design. The Mimic is supposed to be intelligent, smart, and capable of manipulating you, even a person like Arnold, into doing his bidding. And that's why we see he wins in most of the endings, which we'll talk about later. However, the springlock suit is solely utilized to hide from the Mimic, like Glamrock Freddy in Security Breach. This is honestly such a bad move. The springlock suit should have had more mechanics, like having a danger where you could get spring-locked. I know it said in the Nurse Dolly section that, oh no, you got spring-locked, but that never actually happens. Arnold never feels anything, he never says anything, and he walks by pretty fine and was scrape-free, because we don't see him like start dying or anything from getting spring-locked. You think with the suits being so fragile and that element being so vital and core to the series as a whole, and that this is actually a prototype version of the springlock suit, that it would be actually more prone to having a springlock failure than even the ones in Fredbear's Family Diner. And that is why the springlock suit isn't utilized as well as it should have been. For God's sake, the suit is freaking rusting. It is not in good shape. It shouldn't be this secure for Arnold. Okay, so after you casually kill Nurse Dolly, you make it through warehouse with minor gameplay variations, then we get to the admin office, or as many people say, the Chica section. By this point in the game, the Mimic has barely lived up to its name. As I've said before, it's just been a spooky robot chasing you around in various costumes, but the Chica segment finally hints at something more interesting, because the Mimic impersonates cupcakes scattered across all the areas in the admin office, which are used to lure or mislead you, or call Chica to your location. And this is honestly a clever mechanic, because we've never seen the Mimic actually utilize its mimicking properties for something other than just, I don't know, looking like something else. It actually mimics what Chica would do in that situation. The sad thing is that when the Mimic is actually mimicking something and actually making new gameplay mechanics around it, it's only shown in this section. And it's the entire premise of the game. It shows up once, singular, not two, not three, and it only does so briefly in a mid-game segment that doesn't even lead to a proper chase scene, because we all know that's how you do a horror game. Afterwards, we probably got the best section of the entire game, and that's the White Tiger section. Although not perfect, because it is pretty short, it's honestly one of the best parts if you're a horror fan, because this part is actually scary. There's actual darkness, and it's very tense, because, you know, you have to go wander into the light sources, resetting generators, and making sure you're quick, otherwise the Mimic in the White Tiger will kill you. And it's honestly the atmosphere that makes this section so tense. It's not really the gameplay, because although it is unique to this section, the atmosphere, the darkness, the absolute dread you feel when walking through to each light source and you're in the darkness is honestly fantastic.
Say that again?
Afterwards, it is here where we can reach the bad ending.
Well done, Arnie. I didn't think you could do it, but here you are. That data diver has exact permissions, and you found the blueprints. You made it the farthest, farther than I had expected. I can't believe it was you. Put that data diver in the inventory system. It'll go right to where it's needed. Good work.
Now, I do have my problems with the bad ending. However, it is cool seeing the mimic actually mimicking the dispatch and tricking Arnold into giving him the data driver. But we have to remember, this is the same plot point as was in Ruin from Security Breach. So it's not very original, and that kind of diminishes how cool this ending is. Also, have a problem with the fact that the mimic attacks Arnold at the end of this bad ending cutscene, as I've said already before. Guys, we're here. We're almost done with this godforsaken game. I am getting sick of recording and editing just Secrets of the Mimic after Secrets of the Mimic, but guess what? We're almost done, and you know what one of the final areas is? It's freaking fan service. That's what it is. It's fan service. And one of the final areas, it's just the underground prototype showroom. It's FNAF 1 but prototype. And basically here you're confronted with uncanny recreations of classic FNAF 1 animatronics, like Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and even Fredbear and Spring Bonnie prototypes, which shouldn't be prototypes because this is around the time where Fredbear's Family Diner should be open, but whatever. And it's here that you download the blueprints on the data driver, and you're surrounded by ghosts of nostalgia. Now, if the game was going to lean into FNAF 1 lore, I would say that it should have fully leaned in. It shouldn't just be this section that only occurs after you get an ending of the game. You have to try to get this. There's a whole ending before this. If you just do the first ending, the bad ending, you'll never even see this. This section just feels like a half-hearted museum. It feels like it's just fan service for fan service. The environments are kind of impressive, but they're lit up a lot, and they're honestly just meant for show. This isn't even a problem with just this game, it's a problem with the franchise as a whole. It won't let go of the past, like the 2014 to 2018 era. It just won't do it. Gameplay wise, you just meet Fiona, you run from the mimic a couple times and you hide from them in the springlock suit that I told you wasn't very good mechanically and lore wise. And that's about it. You're done with this godforsaken room. Let's move on. Let's actually finish this because I'm honestly tired of talking about the story.
Edwin, it's me. It's been a long time since we had a chance to talk. I hope you're taking care of yourself. Knowing you, you are still trying to hold it all together. But the company doesn't matter anymore. It's over. You need to let it go. I beg you, put it all aside and fix M2. It is not too late. You can stay up in the main house if you want to, but would you consider visiting every once in a while?
And finally, we're done with the story. Oh, what? Wait, what? What is this? That's right, there's a secret ending, and how do you get it? You do this moon game thing on one of the screens, and then you put this plushie on this pedestal, and then you tell a story to the mimic, and it turns into a child, preventing it from killing you, and then it goes to sleep. Yeah, it goes to sleep. That's not my main issue with this ending, however, because I do think it's kind of cute and kind of satisfying to end the game this way. However, my main problem is this is left on a cliffhanger. You don't know what happens after this. You don't know if Arnold survives. You don't know how he escapes. You don't know what happens to the mimic. Even though we see the mimic in, I don't know, the Security Breach Ruin, we don't know how he goes from sleeping in this FNAF 4 style bedroom to being in security breach ruined. We don't know how that transition happens, and I thought this game was gonna tell us that. It tells the origins and how it transitions into ruin, but I guess that's for another game. But we're not done. For the last part of the story section of this video before the gameplay section, I'm gonna use Not Walm's video to explain the timeline while I commentate on it. Hopefully this gives an accurate representation of the story while allowing me to incorporate my thoughts onto it. Alright, without further ado, let's go.
Before we step inside the manor with Arnold, we need to understand the ghosts that were already there. This story belongs to Edwin Murray, a brilliant inventor who inherited his father's costume workshop. He met his wife Fiona while working on a project, and together they became a creative powerhouse.
I'm just gonna interject here and say that I don't like the art style for these characters at all, not one bit. And I think it kind of takes the mystery out and intrigue out of these characters if we knew what they looked like.
Designing characters like Chica and Foxy for companies like Fazbear Entertainment. They had a son named David, but Edwin was a workaholic, often neglecting his family or his creations. Tragedy struck when Fiona died in what was likely the Fall Fest fire of the 70s, leaving Edwin alone to raise a grieving son he barely knew how to care for. Consumed by loss and work, Edwin made a desperate choice. He created M1.
So you're telling me that Edwin had no other choice but to create M1. He literally had no other option. Zero. He couldn't hire someone to take care of David. He couldn't bring David to work. He couldn't... I really don't understand. There's a lot of things you could do before having to create an entire freaking animatronic to take care of your child. Remember, this is in like the 70s or 60s or whatever. This is not now. You have to create an entire animatronic. You know how expensive that is to create an animatronic? You literally couldn't hire someone to take care of your child? Like, I don't believe you at that point. Alright, back to the video.
An advanced endoskeleton designed to learn and mimic human behavior. He programmed it with Fiona's voice and mannerisms, creating a replacement mother for his son. M1 learned its role so well, it began to truly believe it was Fiona. But the tragedy wasn't over. Just before his 4th birthday, David was tragically killed in an accident while M1 was supposed to be watching him. Broken, Edwin was convinced by M1, his robot wife, to do it again. Create another mimic, M2, to bring back his son. But Edwin couldn't accept this new robot as David. Overworked, grieving, and lonely, he finally snapped. In a fit of pure rage, he brutally attacked M2, the animatronic meant to be his son. In doing so, he didn't destroy it, he corrupted it, pouring all of his agony, grief, and murderous rage directly into his programming. This new corrupted mimic, the M2, became a monster. It began mimicking Edwin's rage and neglect, even mocking him in his own voice. Edwin eventually grew tired of M1, the Fiona mimic, and transferred her consciousness into the manor's security system, where she became F10N4, or Fiona.
Other than what I've said, I don't really have any other complaints with this story. I think it's otherwise pretty well written. But then again, it's less of the story of Edwin that I have problems with, and it's more of what you see in the actual game, rather than what you hear, if you know what I mean. Anyways, let's keep going.
So what is the real secret of the mimic? When you piece together every tape reel, every ending, and every hidden detail, you realize the secret is that there was never just one. The story of this game is a tragic tale of 2 different mimics, born from one family's unimaginable grief. First, you have M1, the original, created by Edwin Murray to be a stand-in for his wife, Fiona, after she died. This mimic learned her mannerisms, her voice, her role as mother to their son, David. Even after Edwin discarded her, her consciousness lived on as a manor security system, F10 and 4. F10 and 4 is a ghost in the machine, the remnant of Fiona, who spends the entire game trying to guide Arnold. She creates the cradle software to contain the monster her husband made, and in the good ending, she leads Arnold to the replica of their home, trying to get him to fix what went wrong.
Why the hell does Edwin have a replica of his own home in like his building? That's just weird. Why would you do that? Honestly, I don't understand. There's some set pieces in this game that just don't make sense, and this is one of them. It's only there to fit with the story, and that's it. It honestly shouldn't even be in the game. There should have been replaced with something else. But what do I know? I'm just a person on YouTube talking about Secret of the Mimic. Okay, let's keep going.
Then you have M2, the physical endoskeleton we see haunting us. This was the animatronic meant to replicate their son, David, after he also tragically died. But this mimic wasn't raised with love. It was born from Edwin's despair and then subjected to his pure unfiltered rage. Edwin's violent breakdown didn't destroy M2, it corrupted it, teaching it rage, neglect, and cruelty. This is why M2 is more than just a mindless monster. Its personality shifts depending on the suit it's in, mimicking key parts of David's childhood.
I'm gonna give the game credit here. Having the game being based around the repercussions of showing anger or showing negative emotions and just acting on that to people who are looking up to you, especially the mimic and even David to an extent, that's a pretty good story. It's a very good setup, and I have to give it props for that. Just telling you guys, I'm not all mad about everything in this game. I'm not going to look to try to hate on everything, and I know people are going to say that in the comments, but I'm just telling you, I'm trying to be reasonable, and I think you know that too. Alright, back to the video.
It dances as Chica, representing his mother, Fiona. It hides as a white tiger, David's favorite comfort toy. It's a walking amalgamation of a child's trauma and a father's violent grief. And we can't forget the role of Fazbear's entertainment. The summary makes it clear that William Afton and Henry Emily weren't just clients. They were corporate rivals who actively sabotaged Edwin's company, stole his ideas, and then wanted the Mimic project at all costs once they found out about it. The pressure and espionage created the stressful environment where these tragedies unfolded. Edwin's disappearance was just a happy coincidence that let them take everything. This all leads to the game's brilliant ending. The bad ending, where Dispatch is revealed to be the Mimic who then stuffs Arnold into a suit, is the ultimate punishment for simply following the orders of a corrupted company. But the good ending is the one we believe to be canon. Arnold succeeds in activating the cradle, which starts a fire, a recurring theme for cleansing or ending things in FNAF. But the corrupted Mimic, M2, survives, escapes the manor, and steals the upgraded Data Diver from Arnold's dying body. This event is crucial, as it directly explains how the Mimic gets out into the world to become the primary antagonist of Security Breach and Ruin. The secret ending, however, is the most heartbreaking. It's the what if ending. It shows that redemption was possible. By finding all the collectibles and completing the bedtime story puzzle, Arnold can finish what Edwin couldn't. He can calm M2's rage and restore its original, innocent David programming. The fact that this peaceful ending is locked behind New Game Plus suggests it's a dream of what could have been, making the canon ending, where the monster escapes, even more tragic.
And that's it. That's the story. And other than the fact that I think that the Mimic has to be the one to punish Arnold for his sins, like what the frick is that? That aside, this is honestly a good story. As I've said earlier, not much else to talk about it. I'm honestly getting fed up with talking about the story of this game because I have a lot of issues with the gameplay. So let's get right onto that.
If you're feeling down, order several for your house today. It's a merry invention from Mariko.
Clearly ripped straight from Garten of Ban. Everybody knows what that is. So it's the coat rack on wheels from Garten of Ban.
Now we are finally talking about the gameplay. I'm so happy to be here, guys. I gotta love it. So done with the story. I have been spending way too much time on this video so far. So let's just get right into action. Let's all be honest here when we say that this game could never be as glitchy as Security Breach was, and I'm just including this section to address the fact that yes, while Security Breach was glitchy and Steel Wool games are usually glitchy, this game has a surprising lack of them. And it is not 100% clear though, because there are instances where there are bugs, but it's severely diminished and does not detract away from the gameplay. You want to know which glitches are still in the game? Well, I don't know if they are still in the game after patches, but let me show you some.
Why is that? Why is this one so low res? I got a lag. Oh, why is frame rate so bad here? I guess my 4090 isn't good enough for this.
And then we'll want to go to the locker beside it and hop on in. And I guess the devs never accounted for someone walking right back into the locker after leaving it, as if you do and then slightly move forward and crouch at just the right time, despite not being able to jump in this game, you'll actually get propelled on top of the locker. And after doing this about 2 or 3 times, you've basically performed a Faz miracle, as you now actually end up basically at the end of the game.
So the game isn't without bugs, but what game is? And we've got to be honest here, Steel Wool has done a fantastic job of ridding this game of bugs, and I'm just telling you, Security Breach left a bad taste in my mouth from what happened. This game doesn't. So that's a positive, but it's not always going to be that way here. Remember when I said this game felt like Poppy Playtime and AI, whatever I said at the start of the video? Well, guess what? I wasn't lying. Honestly, this game feels more of a mascot horror game than any of the other Five Nights at Freddy's games that have come before. This game reeks of the mascot horror garbage that we've been seeing for the past like 3 years, since Garden of Ban 1. For example, the chase scenes. In Poppy Playtime, we're introduced to a character, and then, oh, we got a chase scene. This game, we're introduced to a character, whoop, got a chase scene. It's the same thing. But unlike Poppy Playtime, and as I said before, we don't have as much time dedicated to spending time with these characters, so we're not terrified of them. There's no tension built up. And if you don't take my word for it, take Markiplier's word.
Alright, so here's another reason why I don't like a chase sequence.
I could stay here forever.
It's only fun once.
These games are amazing.
You either make it easy and a little foolproof so that they only have to go through it once, or you make it actually a challenge with actual gameplay elements, and then they have to do it again if they fail.
This game is fundamentally flawed in the way it chooses to make the game flow. It honestly doesn't work as a introduce certain character, either Jackie, Big Top, whatever, and then have a chase scene or some other big ending scene, kill them off somehow, and then boom, oh, next section. It's honestly just, it's too fast paced and it's not enough. It's not enough for a horror game. There needs to be more if you want it to make it fully fleshed out. And that's what I'm trying to say. And the lack of fleshed out characters and chase scenes, even though they're all the Mimic, technically, this all leads to the game feeling bland. But do you know what else leads to the game feeling bland that no one has talked about yet? It's... You want to hear how the game sounds 90% of the time? I've put some of the older FNAF soundtracks in this game, and I want you to compare it to what you've just heard. Hell, even Security Breach had some good themes. Barring some chase scenes, what I'm trying to say is that this game doesn't utilize music in a good way to enhance its themes and tension. Any good game would use a good soundtrack or even a good ambience to enhance what you are seeing on the screen. It only helps. It can never hurt unless it's, done wrong. I know I've talked a little about this earlier, but I really want to go in detail about what is wrong with, the Mimic. Other than a select few areas, and honestly some of the main characters, the Mimic really doesn't do anything to utilize its mimicking properties to make the gameplay more interesting. Other than the cupcake section, all the Mimic really does is chase you around. It doesn't do anything other than that. And it's such a shame because I feel like the Mimic could have been used in a way where one character could have accounted for a whole plethora of gameplay styles. And the ways you avoid the Mimic could have been vastly different between gameplay sections. And it could have been amazing, but they fumbled the bag. And this leads into the gameplay because most of what you do in this game is just put things in other places, solve the same few puzzles over and over again, barring some different puzzles, but mostly you're doing the same few over and over again. Honestly, one good game idea could have been the Mimic adapting to the player's playstyle, so you'd have to constantly change how you play and how you avoid the Mimic throughout the game, creating some sort of diversity throughout your gameplay experience. One controversial take that I have for this game is the fact that I don't think it looks very good. The graphics aren't the best, the rooms are very well lit, and the whole art style of this game is just very generic compared to other FNAF games. When you were looking at the earlier titles, even Security Breach, all of them looked distinct and pretty good for the time that they came out. When you played those games, you probably thought in your head, yeah, this is FNAF. With Secrets of the Mimic, I feel like it just doesn't have that same identity. Everything looks just sterile. It honestly doesn't help that this game doesn't have much going for it graphically. It honestly looks like it came out like 5 to 10 years ago. I know this isn't some big budget, amazing big game thing that we all are used to seeing these days, but honestly I feel like some more time and effort should have been put into the graphical fidelity of most of the stuff in this game, because it honestly just feels like a downgrade from Security Breach. And the last point I really want to bring up is that this game just isn't scary. And I don't mean this in a subjective sense, but this game is very well lit, and it doesn't have a lot of horror elements that would make you feel scared. Yeah, you'll jump up in your seat a little bit, maybe a few times. However, most of the time, you're feeling like you're just going through a story. You don't feel like you're playing a game that's intended to scare you. And that is the biggest problem.
I miss it. When you have your favorite food from your childhood or something, and you're eating it, and you've been looking forward to it for a long time, you haven't had it in years, and then you go to take a bite, and you realize that they changed the recipe. And it's not that it's not good, but it's not what you've really wanted, And it sucks to say that, and it probably sucks to hear that. But it's true. I'm not going to be dishonest here. And I don't even know if there's any value in what I'm saying, but, I'm just speaking what I feel.
So yeah, Secrets of the Mimic sucks. It's not unplayable, it's not the worst thing FNAF has ever produced, but it is one of the most disappointing. And this is because it had a real shot, a compelling premise, a great villain, a dark human tragedy, buried under layers of forgotten concrete. but instead of building tension or dread, it built nothing. What we got was a half-baked story full of confusing fan service, animatronics that don't really connect to this series they're supposed to predate, chase sequences that feel like they were designed on an assembly line, a soundtrack that barely exists, a monster called The Mimic that barely mimics, and gameplay that forgot it was supposed to be horror. All tied together with the kind of lighting and art direction you'd expect from a rejected Fortnite horror mod. And I know this review's harsh, but that's because I actually care about this franchise. I grew up on these games. The early FNAF games scared me, fascinated me, made me think. They weren't perfect, but hell, they were focused. This is just noise. Secrets of the Mimic doesn't feel like a story someone wanted to tell. It feels like content. Something spat out to plug a lore hole and keep the IP warm. So if you made it this far, thank you. Genuinely. But I'm done sugarcoating the state of this genre. We need better games, more focus, and of course, less mimicry. I'll see you in the next one, and remember, stay safe.